Hey, what's going on, everyone? Dave for Watcher. Gag has an update on a significant winter storm that is expected to bring lots of snowfall to portions of the Great Lakes region as well as the lower Midwest. We're also talking about some significant snow totals in the Northeast due to lake effect snow. We've got all the details coming right up, right? So, thank you for joining me here on this Sunday afternoon. We have a lot to talk about in this video. So we're going to be going over all of the latest details on, again, this very significant winter storm that is bringing close to a foot of snow or even higher for a lot of folks out here across the upper Midwest as well as the Great Lakes region. Again, we're talking about instances of heavy snow and potentially close to blizzard conditions. Now, National Weather Service offices actually did consider issuing blizzard warnings, which is pretty hard to believe considering that we're literally at November 9th. But they are not going to issue blizzard warnings. Again, we are still talking about some potentially close to whiteout conditions at times for these areas. But as always, we're going to start out here by taking a look at your current radar. You can see, again, we got our big picture right now, our major storm system working its way across the Northeast. You can see it is taking on that negative tilt. We are talking about some heavy snow across portions of far southeastern Canada, spilling into portions of upstate New York and interior New England. But we also do have some showers and thunderstorm activity down here in southern New England. Those thunderstorms are working their way onto on the land there. So we are going to be talking about quite the soggy and wet afternoon for our folks out there. Again, in the New England coastline. Down the backside, we have very heavy snowfall starting to occur out here across the Midwest. We are talking about some banding starting to kind of happen out here across the Chicago area. There are some football games going on, obviously, in these areas, and they actually have been talking about the snowfall that has been falling out there. So that is something to keep an eye on. But we are seeing, again, a lot of that snowfall work its way farther south. So definitely going to be an interesting event to watch. But we started here, once again, by taking a look at your current watches, warnings, and advisories, your current alerts. And you get to have quite a bit going on right now, as of right now. Again, we do have those winter weather advisories going out for portions of northern Maine, far upstate northern New York, portions of northern Ohio, and areas around Lake Erie, Pennsylvania, back up towards spotty areas in Michigan, as well as northern Indiana, northeastern Illinois, and then all the way back up into northern northern Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan. And we also do have winter storm warnings now going out for portions of extreme northern Indiana and northeastern Illinois, right around the Chicago metro area. Right now, Chicago is under a winter storm warning, again, which is where we're talking about pretty significant impacts as far as snow is concerned. But we also do have winter storm warnings up here for portions of the Appalachian Mountain regions, into portions of extreme eastern West Virginia. So very heavy snow is also expected out there. Then you look to the south of there, and we actually have some alerts out here in the very deep south. In this dark blue shade, these are your freeze warnings going out for portions of eastern North Carolina and South Carolina, as well as portions of northern Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, most of Louisiana, southern and central Arkansas, a lot of central Oklahoma, as well as even northeastern Texas. Anywhere in this dark blue shade, we're talking about, again, freeze warnings. So there are definitely going to be some potential for some sewage problems. Obviously, those crop failures are going to be a possibility, but cracking pipes, okay, all of that bad stuff. Plumbing, all of that is going to be harmed out here when you have temperatures, dropping this low that fast. And also that obviously means it's going to be cold, so make sure you bundle up. But we also have freeze watches in that light blue shade going out for portions of western North Carolina, South Carolina, back into all of Georgia, southern Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, and even into northern Florida. So that's pretty crazy. It's literally only November 9th. And we have freeze watches in northern Florida. I mean, that is pretty incredible stuff. This would not happen on a regular November day. Obviously, we are talking about well below average temperatures. This is what you get when you get an Arctic blast. Again, you get some trouble out here in areas that really don't usually deal with it around this time of year, or even at all. Again, northern Florida is pretty absurd for given the fact that we're literally in the early days of November. But we also do have some red flag warnings going for portions of southern Texas back into southern Louisiana in this hot pink shade. So very dry, very windy conditions expected in this region. So make sure, again, you're not messing with anything flammable outdoors, that you're really taking extra precautions. Again, there's a very high fire spread risk for today. And then that just about does it. Again, we do have a couple of high wind warnings out here in my portion of Montana, Wyoming, and even into the Las Vegas area. We do have some wind advisories. So if you happen to be in any of those areas, make sure you are just staying safe out there, again, with the addition of those gusty winds. But we're going to start out here by looking at your HRRR model. We're going to go hour by hour for the outlook of our winter storm that is currently impacting the Midwest United States. So we see here on the latest OOZ HRRR, I want to start a little bit farther, in the past, just so we could get the full timeline of what this storm is actually going to be looking like. You can see our low pressure system is jetting across the central, really portion of central Illinois into Indiana. We already are starting out with lots of snowfall, pretty nice shield of snow, moving into portions of northern Illinois, portions of Michigan, and southern Wisconsin. Some of these areas may actually end up starting as all snow. So the first precipitation you're going to get from the storm, some of you guys might actually have it as snow. Now, there will be lots of mixing issues around because this is pretty close to your 546 line, which is where your above freezing temperatures are lying. Again, these areas are just around 32 degrees. This is a prime example of how cold it needs to be exactly for snow to fall. And, I mean, anywhere where it's not below 32 degrees, that's where we're going to get rain. And so we actually do see rain, again, just south of where this 540 line, where that blue line is. Even into northern Illinois, behind the cold front, we're still talking about quite a bit of rainfall coming down. So a lot of you may end up being surprised that the first amount of precipitation you get, the first, instances of precipitation may come as all rain. Again, there's a very high chance of that happening for a lot of these areas that are even under winter storm warnings. But snow struggles to move into the picture here in Chicago. As of right now, we're talking about extremely wet snow to also some rainfall here and there. All right, but the overnight HRRR last night really wanted to struggle for areas initially to get that snowfall, but then we get into this afternoon into this evening, and that's when we start to see everything kind of take over with that snow. That low pressure system continues to move just south of where that 540 line is, but you are starting to see a lot of that rainfall turn to heavy snow. So at this point, if you're south of Chicago, you have a nasty band of snow starting to set up there with, this is very, very heavy, wet snowflakes. You're talking about the large snowflakes that are going to be accumulating pretty easily. Again, it really all depends also on how quickly the ground is going to freeze. Again, if the ground can get to that 32 degree mark quicker than, the snow comes down, then we're going to be talking about some significant accumulation. Now, there's a chance we're going to see a lot of snow come down, but not that much will stick because it's too warm on the surfaces. So lots of heavy snowfall is definitely expected. Again, the later into the night we go. So once that first initial precipitation moves out, we're going to start to see what we call northwest flow develop. Alright, that's going to bring some lingering energy also off of the Great Lakes here, and it's going to bring it all down into the same exact region, and you're going to get a second round of snowfall. Now, keep in mind, with your low pressure system also moving off to the east, it's not over for our folks out here in Indiana and Ohio. Watch as this also turns into very heavy snow. In fact, for our folks out here in northern Indiana, I think you guys actually might end up with some of the best snowfall totals because you're going to be well behind the cold front for the entire event, but the HRRR is going for some areas to actually stay as literally entirely snow for the entire event. So you might not even get a single drop of rain. You're just going to get snow, and it's going to be heavy, okay? This is as we're getting into tonight and eventually into tomorrow morning. Overnight, you have very heavy snow coming down. Again, those very large wet flakes just north of where that low pressure center is. That is very wet snow and very heavy snow across portions of southern Michigan, northern Indiana, as well as northeastern Ohio. Again, really do think that we're going to see a period, a couple hours at least, of heavy snow out there before northwest flow returns. And at this point, the low pressure system is moving off to the east, allowing for our cold front to plunge down into the southern United States. So that no longer is a problem. The cold air being limited is no longer a problem for us. So any piece of energy that brings or manages to bring precipitation into the picture out here for folks in the Midwest, it's all going to be snow. And that's exactly what we see here. And look at this. We actually get some lake effect snow to develop here. And with that northwest flow, it brings all that snowfall down. So I do think that tomorrow, because of how heavy these little bands of snowfall could be, again, these are very isolated small bands, we might actually be talking about some snow squalls. I do think that if these bands stay heavy enough over land, there will be the chance for snow squalls. Again, these are likely going to be very, very heavy in nature, very quick, but as they come off the Great Lakes, again, I do think there will be some very gusty winds with this, just given that we do have a cold front, a very strong cold front, bring lots of energy down. I do think some significant snow squalls are possible. And watch as the snow gets very far south. That northwest flow is actually going to bring down snow a little bit farther south. So just because you get rain from the initial surface low does not mean you're not going to get any snow at all. Again, on the backside, so much energy is coming down that's actually going to get snow all the way down to portions of Kentucky. So folks out here in the Kentucky, portions of southern Indiana and southern Ohio are going to be talking about potentially your first flakes of the season if you haven't seen any already. And you also are talking about more snow out here for folks out here in the eastern Illinois. So areas south of where the first snowfall will come down may actually get a little redemption here. I do think that there could be instances of pretty heavy snow, again, for our counties out here in the portions of Indiana and Illinois. And then finally, we end the run here, and we still got more banding and lake effect snow coming off of the Great Lakes here. Lake Ontario and even Lake Erie out here really starting to give a pounding. So all of these areas out here from Illinois to Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, back into New York State and Pennsylvania, Lake Erie and, Lake Ontario, you guys are going to be really starting to get some heavy snowfall as we get into Monday morning and really all through Monday into Tuesday. We could be talking about, again, even into Tuesday morning, still some heavy snow. So there is quite a bit of snowfall on the way, and this is going to be a very long-lasting event. So as far as snow totals are concerned, this is the latest HRRR OOZ. Again, we want to look at the full event instead of what's going on now, because at this point the event's already underway. And you can see we have a very impressive snowfall forecast here. We're talking about potentially 2 to 4 inches of snow across all of northern Illinois and portions of eastern Iowa. We are done with the snow for the most part out here into Iowa. So Cedar Rapids, again, the HRRR was going for 3.6 inches, but look at Rockford going again for 3.6, and now you get into northeastern Illinois, and this is where we're going to be talking about the combination of the heaviest snowfall from the low pressure system, but also the heaviest snowfall from the snow squalls and the lake effect snow, and that adds up to a grand total of 12.3 inches of snow out here in Chicago. Again, that would be just about a foot of snow in Chicago. Arlington Heights, 4.2 inches. And look at this down here in the portions of northern Indiana. You're talking about potentially over a foot of snowfall north of Lafayette. So South Bend to Chicago, all the way out towards Gary and Arlington Heights, this area out here that kind of, splits the border between Indiana and Illinois, these areas may end up with close to a foot of snow by the time this entire event is done. Again, we have an area of red here. This is what we're talking about, again, potentially close to 13 inches of snow. I think we did flash 13 just now. Okay, so anywhere in this purple or red shaded area, this is where we're talking about potentially over 8 inches of snow. Again, South Bend going for 8.5 inches. But even into Michigan, we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth, but Portland and Jackson all going for, again, 2 to 4 inches of snow. So a pretty widespread swath of significant snowfall out here. You can see back into Indiana. Indianapolis could end up with around an inch of snow, all the way down here to, again, northern Kentucky. These areas may also end up with close to an inch of snow due to all of that snow coming off the Great Lakes, and with that fast-moving northwest flow, again, that's going to bring all that energy and the potential snow squalls down into areas as far south as Kentucky, and even farther south than there, again, in those mountainous regions. So widespread snow is expected, but Terre Haute, an inch of snow. Again, even into southern Illinois, we're talking about our first dusting to an inch of snowfall of the season. But definitely some pretty significant snowfall totals here. Champaign, 2 inches. Lafayette, 2 inches. And even in Indianapolis, we could be talking about some accumulating snowfall. So widespread snow is expected, but that is a huge snowfall forecast for Chicago and the entire Chicago metro, all the way out towards South Bend. especially northwestern Indiana. Man, you guys could really hit the jackpot with this one, and I really would not be surprised if some areas saw quite a bit of snowfall. But we now look at Wisconsin. Wisconsin's going to be a pretty interesting state with this storm. Again, there are kind of two sides of it. One, you have the Great Lakes side, where to the north we're going to have more energy, again, for that northwest flow, which is going to be a kind of a separate event of its own. But then to the south, you have the main event. So we'll start out to the north. Extreme northern Wisconsin, we could be talking about pretty similar totals. Again, up to 8 inches of snow around the Ironwood area. This run of the HRRR is going for around 4 inches of snow in Ironwood, even up towards Stevens Point and Wausau. We could be talking about, again, up to an inch of snow, an inch and a half, or excuse me, half an inch to an inch. But especially in the UP in Michigan, look at Marquette. You're talking about 16 inches of snow. That is in the UP of Michigan, okay? So this is the upper peninsula of Michigan. Just from that northwest flow alone, we see a huge swath of, again, anywhere from really 4 to 8 inches, and especially in the Marquette and Escanaba area, anywhere from 5 all the way up to 10 inches of snow. This may be slightly overdone, but we do have winter storm warnings in this area. So again, close to over a foot of snow cannot be ruled out for our folks out here in the Upper Peninsula. Again, not a hugely populated area, but up towards Marquette and Escanaba. Again, very significant snow totals are expected. So that is, again, quite significant. But we now look at Michigan, and this is also very interesting as well. Okay, you can see that the signal for our Great Lakes snowfall is very impressive. Again, in the northern part of Michigan, we're talking about similar totals, 3 to 6 inches for the most part. So Traverse City, we're going for 4 inches of snow. Alpena, we're going for 3 inches here on the latest OOZ HRRR, but you could see localized areas may end up with a little bit more snow. Again, there's a signal that we could be seeing close to a foot of snow even in these areas. So in northern Michigan, we're talking about the potential to see up to 10 inches, maybe even a foot of snow. Even in the Alpena area, we're talking about close to 8 inches of snow. So really anywhere in northern Michigan, I'd say it's fair game there for a foot of snow. And look at southern Michigan, Saginaw going for 16 inches of snow on the OOZ HRRR from last night. Okay, that could be slightly overdone, but I mean, that is, again, in a scenario where we would be seeing the perfect outcome, again, for the most snowfall, where you get a lot of snow, the most snow you can get out of the surface low, and then that northwest flow just brings, a bunch of snow squalls and lake effect snow just pumping into the region, and then again, that adds up to over a foot of snow. I think that's a scenario like that is definitely possible. Now, do I think we're going to see exactly 16 inches of snow? I don't think so, but I think that definitely, again, a lot of snow is going to be possible for those areas if things add up correctly. But you can see Lansing, Kalamazoo, Jackson, Flint, all these areas seem to have a little bit more of a stronger hold on how much snow exactly we're going to get. So I'd say for these areas, about 2 to 4 inches. Closer to Detroit, though, we could be talking about 3 to 6. So on this run of the HRRR, they're going for 4 inches in Detroit, and Sarnia going for an inch. So again, quite a few inches of snow is really expected for the most part out here for portions of northern Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin. But nonetheless, again, very significant winter storm here. And I do want to quickly look, before we move over to the northeast side of things, I do want to look at the expected snowfall from the official National Weather Service forecast. And this is also very interesting. So earlier in the event, they were actually going for 1 to 15 inches of snow in Chicago. I don't think I've ever seen something like that. They were literally forecasting a 15-inch snowfall range less than 48 hours before an event. That is something you almost never see from the National Weather Service. That just is a sliver of kind of the just the idea of how much or how little confidence we have in the snowfall forecast. Again, we know that there's likely going to be a lot of snow from the surface low. That's definitely going to be happening. But we have no clue where all of those bands are going to set up. Again, they're going to be so sporadic that we really just have to nowcast, okay? So as we get into that event, we just have to see where the bands are going to set up, where the snow squalls are going to move into, and which areas are in line to get the most snow. But the main idea is that the bands are going to be moving into generally the Chicago and extreme northeast Illinois area, all the way down through northwestern Indiana and back into southwestern Michigan, alright? So all of these areas will likely end up somewhere in these areas will end up with the most amount of snow. So the current expected forecast from the National Weather Service is that Chicago will end up with 7 to 12 inches of snow. So again, that's 7 inches to a foot of snowfall. Waukegan 3 to 9 inches, which again, that's a huge range, 6 inches there. But Valparaiso 6 to 12 inches, Knox 7 to 18. That's pretty crazy. Look at this, 7 to 18 inches. That is a 9-inch range. So you are, again, you have the potential to see quite a bit of snowfall, which is, 7 inches. That's very significant. Still warrants a winter storm warning. But you could see 18 inches, which again is literally a foot and a half of snowfall. So there is a very, very big range here in how much snow we could see, and I think this is a good way of reflecting what we saw in the HRRR, because again, the HRRR did have a foot of snow for literally all these areas. And so the National Weather Service is saying, yeah, we could be talking about likely a foot of snow, but there's a chance we could only see, 6 to 8 inches of snow. So there's a very wide range in what we're going to see. So I want to make it clear that, don't hold us, hostage if we do not get this perfectly right. Because again, there is a very high chance that we could be saying, oh yeah, there's a chance we see up to, 16 inches of snow, but you only end up with 4 to 8. All right, so lots of lots of disagreement here. Sorry about that pause. I couldn't find my words. Lots of disagreement between the models and the National Weather Service. But again, that is the latest forecast from the National Weather Service. One thing I do want to look at quickly, this is the high-end amount. So this is the 1 in 10 chance of it happening, but this is the maximum amount of snow that could fall. This is not a forecast. But if we were to see the very max snowfall fall, it would be for Waukegan 11 inches, Chicago 16, Valparaiso 17, and literally close to 2 feet of snow out here in northwestern Indiana, which would be insane. But Knox 21 inches, South Bend 18, Benton Harbor 15. These are November snow totals. Again, this is not a forecast. This is what the max amount of snowfall would look like. Again, if we saw literally a perfect scenario, bring the most amount of snow possible. But you also look at the low end amount. Look at this. Literally, Waukegan, 1 inch. So there's, again, very low chance this happens. But the very lowest amount would be 1 inch. Waukegan still seems pretty much inevitable that are really just, certain that we do see a big event out here in northwest Indiana, but the lower amount would be 6 inches in South Bend, 5 in Knox and Valparaiso. So that takes care of things out here in the lower Midwest. Now we look at the Northeast, because the Northeast is also going to be talking about some very significant impacts from the storm system. Now you go hour by hour here, you can see our surface low finally brings its first snowfall and precipitation into portions of northern New Hampshire, Vermont, and upstate New York. But that starts out as, again, very, very light snow before the main action arrives. You can see our low pressure system is continuing to move up into the region. I will say, however, a lot of areas are going to have trouble getting to snowfall, because we do have, again, that warm front that is actively getting pushed out of the region. It's still pumping lots of moisture both into the surface low, but also into the region. So as the cold front moves out of the, as the cold front moves into the region, it's going to try to push all that warm air out. So a lot of areas just south of the border are actually going to struggle to stay snow, and most of these areas are going to stay rain until that low pressure system finally moves through. But you can see there's quite a bit of sleet and freezing rain developing out here in the northern New York State. So the Watertown area could end up with a little bit more sleet and freezing rain than expected, but you finally get that promised shield of very heavy snowfall. I mean, look at this north of the low pressure center. These are very significant rates of snowfall. Again, you're talking about potentially whiteout conditions with this snowfall. You're talking about snowfall rates of 1 to 2 inches per hour with this, but northern Maine, you're going to get thumping of snow, very heavy snow. I mean, heavy bouts of snow all the way from Erie, Pennsylvania, up through all of northern New York State and into into Maine, and then this just continues to kind of, fall into place here, and finally that low pressure center moves out, and then you get the lake effect snow to develop on the backside. Now, it's not as significant for our folks that are in the Northeast than it is for the Midwest, but I do think that you're going to definitely get most of your snowfall and more snowfall with the surface low than with the Midwest. Now, that does not mean that the Midwest is going to see less than the Northeast. This is just, talking about what parts of the storm are going to give the most snow to which areas, alright? So, again, very heavy snow and precipitation expected. I do think that with the surface low, the heaviest precipitation will fall in the Northeast, but with the lake effect snow, it's definitely going to fall in the Midwest. So, we look at now your snowfall totals out here in the Northeast, and they are quite significant. So, we start here in Erie, Pennsylvania, again, northwest Pennsylvania, just off Lake Erie, going for 1 to 2 inches, nothing too significant. Alright, but just up the road, you can see we're talking about more monstrous snowfall totals. Look at this in far western New York State, 10 inches of snow. Again, you're talking about very significant snow totals. We'll look at New York State just for the heck of it, so I can get you guys individual town forecasts. Let me just clean this up here and get you guys going. And there we go. So again, this is now off the NAM because we don't have the full event on the HRRR, but you can see Rochester, that's where we see the 10 inches of snow. Buffalo going for 5 inches. Jamestown up to 5 inches, but even up to Watertown, again, where we were talking about those mixing issues, only about 3.5 inches, which is still quite a bit, but again, not as much as you could have if it was all, if these were all freezing temperatures. But definitely some scattered snowfall possible down here, especially the upper elevations, but into the Albany area, Saratoga Springs, Elmira, Binghamton, Williamsport, Scranton. All these areas could end up with the first snow of the season. Now, some of these areas haven't seen those first flakes, but I definitely do think a lot of these areas farther south will end up with their first flakes of the season. Alright, but all the snow accumulation will happen up north. Potsdam going for 5 inches. Burlington going for 1 to 2. Hanover going for 2 inches. And then all the way up towards Kingston, Belleville, Peterborough, and areas up into Canada. That's where we're talking about the most significant totals, other than, again, our areas near Rochester. So it really looks like western New York State, we're talking about far western New York State, anywhere in this purple area, this is where we're talking about 8 to 12 inches of snowfall, which is going to be very significant and going to cause serious problems on our roadways. And I do want to look at quickly also the lightning flash density off the HRRR. Now, you may be thinking, why are we looking at lightning if it's literally snowfall? Well, I don't know if you guys know, but there is a term called thunder snow, and that happens only with the heaviest amount of snowfall. And I think this is a great example of why we could end up with some thunder snow. Now, you'll notice all of their snowfall coming down here from the north into the Midwest. I was mentioning lake effect snow. Now, lake effect snow comes from all of the water out here on the Great Lakes. It evaporates into a cloud, obviously. You get precipitation to build up in the cloud. Now, you're also probably thinking, then why isn't it falling as rain? Well, it's cold enough for that precipitation that forms and evaporates off the Great Lakes to turn into snow. And the reason why that evaporates off the Great Lakes is because you still have some relatively warm waters. Again, these are not warm at all, but I guess I should say, warm enough where you do get that evaporation process to happen. And because you get the precipitation that falls, it gets very heavy. Once you see, more water get evaporated, then you get more widespread and heavier precipitation. Now, I do think that it could get heavy enough to the point where we actually see some thunderstorm characteristics, kind of because this is how a thunderstorm works. You get water evaporating off the waters, what am I saying? You get, precipitation to evaporate off of the waters, and that's what happens during a thunderstorm. So, there's a chance we could be seeing some instances of lightning, and I do think that thunder snow is going to be a possibility with the heaviest bands. So again, this is going to be with our heaviest lake effect bands, but also with our heaviest, snow squalls potentially. Again, with that possibility, the heaviest snow is going to definitely have the chance to bring some lightning and even some thunder with it. So definitely something to keep an eye on. Just a kind of cool fact there for our weather geeks that are watching right now. But for the last part of the update, I want to look at the GFS here for the next couple of days and weeks because we do have an active pattern coming up. So we look at the latest GFS here for our upcoming pattern. You can see that storm system is expected to move out, and then you finally do get a big ridge to develop out here in the central and eastern United States. So our pattern flips once again. We're reducing now cold air in the west and warmer air in the east, and this would not be a favorable pattern for snowfall out here for our folks in the eastern United States. However, I do think the folks in the western United States would definitely be favored for this pattern, but that does bring some more storm systems and more robust storm systems to ride the ridge here. That's what we kind of like to say, and we get a significant and very strong storm system to develop out here as we get into around November 15th. So this would be 6 days out, not even a week out, and we have a huge signal for a massive storm system that would likely bring an instance of severe weather in the central plains, but also some significant winter precipitation on the back. So we see a very significant winter storm for our folks out here in the Dakotas, all the way down to northern Kansas and Nebraska behind that low pressure system. But this would bring some significant wind gusts to our folks out here in the northern United States, and that kind of fizzles out there as it kind of gets caught up with more cold air, and that trough continues to move out to the east. Alright, so that's a significant storm system that looks to be, again, possibly developing as we get into around the 15th, which this would be next weekend, Saturday into Sunday, and then eventually that moves off to the east. Behind that, we're getting really far out, but there is a signal for more upcoming storm systems, so a very active pattern is ahead according to the GFS. And we now look at the 2-meter temperature anomalies here. Obviously, we have our significant cold blast that is moving down into the southern and eastern United States. So you can see well below average temperatures all the way down into the Gulf Coast, as well as even into the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, look at this. You're talking about well below average temperatures into Mexico. So very significant cold front here. I do think this is uptrended quite a bit. So very below average temperatures for all of our folks out here in the eastern half of the United States. But then there's that ridge that develops, and you can see we are talking about, again, a huge signal for the return of above average temperatures and warmer conditions. But past that, it looks like more cold air could come into the picture. So definitely something to watch here on the GFS. Looks like some very active temperature swings are ahead. But for the most part, we look at the 3 to 4 temperature outlook here, the 3 to 4 week temperature outlook. And so this is valid for November 22nd to the December 5th. So very far out here. This was issued 2 days ago. You can see the Climate Prediction Center is officially forecasting slightly below average temperatures out here across all of the northern United States, while the southern United States, especially the southeast, stays above average. But it definitely looks like, nonetheless, we are going to see a very active pattern for our folks out here, especially in the northern United States. And I do think some strong storm systems bring more instances of snow will be possible. All right, so that's gonna wrap the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I apologize for kind of the lack of good commentary. I've been struggling with some family issues recently, so I can kind of just been caught up in all of that. So I apologize for not being able to upload as well. But hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you possibly leave a donation. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So thank you all for coming to watch. I'll see you guys next video.